Hi, my name is Ross Gustafson, and this is Volta Games. Today, I'm going to teach you how to play Terraforming Mars. Welcome to the game structure video for Terraforming Mars. If you haven't watched the setup video, go back, watch video 1 in this series on how to set up the game. In this video, I'm going to give you the 10,000 foot view of the whole game of Terraforming Mars. You see how each of the game's turns will look like, an entire game round is, how many rounds you kind of expect to play, and then how the end game works. And kind of an overview of all the kinds of actions without going into every single detail of every single action. That's what the next 2 videos are going to be about. They're going to be about the details of the card actions, which is video 3, as well as the other kinds of actions, which is video 4. But let's get on to game structure.
The goal of the game is to have the highest number of victory points, also known as terraform rating, by the end of the game. The game is played over a number of rounds, also known as generations, but you'll find most games will be between 10 to 15 generations. Think of each generation as like 40 to 80 years of attempted terraforming by the different corporations. Each player can play multiple turns in a single generation, so there's plenty you'll get to do as you help terraform Mars. The game will end at the end of the generation in which all 3 game-ending conditions are met. The oxygen level reaches 14%, the temperature level reaches plus 8 degrees Celsius, all 9 ocean tiles are on the board map of Mars. Each of these game-ending conditions can happen in different generations, but the generation where all 3 of these conditions are finally complete, that generation will be the last generation of the game. During that final generation, players can continue playing their turns until all players pass, at which point the endgame process happens. More on that later. Each generation, except the first generation, has the same sequence of phases: player order phase, research phase, action phase, and production phase. In the first generation, the player order and research phases are skipped. The final generation, even though the game conditions are met during the action phase, you still need to perform the production phase before doing the endgame actions. The player order phase is simple. Move the round token cube up 1 on the terraforming rating track to indicate the new round number, and pass the first player token to the next player in clockwise order. That player is the first player for this new generation. The research phase is when players get new action cards. Draw 4 cards for each player. Each player can choose to keep 0 to 4 cards paying 3 mega credits from their supply for each card to keep. So if you kept 3 cards, you would have to pay 9 mega credits to the bank to keep those cards. Then you must discard the remaining cards. All cards that are discarded are always discarded face down in the discard pile. This is very important, as this is when you are planning your actions for the upcoming round or potentially future generations. There is no limit to the number of cards in a player's hand. The third phase is the action phase. This is where the bulk of the game is played. Each player, starting with the player with the first player token, gets to play 1 action, 2 actions, or can choose to pass and not play any more actions this generation. There are 7 kinds of actions a player can make: play a card from your hand, play an action on a blue card, perform a standard project, claim a milestone, fund an award, create a greenery, raise the temperature with heat. We will discuss actions 1 and 2 in video 3, action cards video, and actions 3 through 7 in video 4, other action types video, in more detail. A player can perform any action they are able to perform. There's no limit in the number of times you can perform a type of action as long as you have the resources to perform those actions. The active player must first tell the other players they are performing 1 action, 2 actions, or passing during their turn, and then perform that number of actions. When they are done, the next player in clockwise order performs the actions on their turn or pass. Once everyone has performed their actions, it goes back to the first player to perform more actions. Keep repeating this process until each player has passed. When getting to the turn order of player that has passed, skip that player. Once everyone has passed, it is time for the production phase. All players' energy resources are moved into the heat resource area immediately. Then, for every resource other than mega credits, each player gets the number of resources indicated by the player cube or player marker on the production rate of that resource. A player can never receive less than 0 resources of any particular resource except for mega credits, which are unique. Mega credits are special. Each player gets mega credit resources equal to their current Terraform rating on the Terraform rating track, plus the value of their current mega credit production as indicated by the position of their player marker on their mega credit production track. This is why a player's mega credit production can go as low as -5. This guarantees that a player can lose some mega credit production but never be at 0 total mega credit production because of the Terraform rating. This is also why Terraform ratings for all players start at 20. Any production level can always exceed 10. If it ever does, leave the cube at 10 and add a cube to the appropriate spot to make the addition of the 2 cubes equal your production level above 10. For every 10 production you have of any resource, stack another cube at the 10 spot and move another cube onto the spot to add up to the correct amount. For example, if your production level for mega credits is at 25, place 2 cubes on top of each other at 10 of the mega credit production track and 1 player cube at the 5 spot of the track. Remember, this is the rate at which you produce that kind of resource each generation, but not your total resources. The total resources you currently have are in the resource areas for that resource type of the player mat. Another interesting note, if you see a brown background with a pattern around a resource symbol, this means it is a production rate of that resource, not the amount of that resource. You'll see the difference on many cards and some awards and on the player mat. The brown background may be around several symbols, which means a production rate of many resources. Just be careful. Some final general rules before end game actions and scoring. If you ever increase the temperature, place an ocean tile, or increase oxygen, you gain 1 Terraform rating for each increase or placement. If you max out a temperature or oxygen and you try to increase those, you cannot increase it anymore and you don't get the Terraform rating. If you cannot place any more ocean tiles and you try to, you do not get the Terraform rating. Once these things have been accomplished, that is it for those tracks. Now onto the final actions and scoring. Once you've done your final production round, every player can convert greenery into green tiles. More on that in video 4. Each player can do this as many times as they're able, starting with the last player who had the first player token. Once all players have placed greenery tiles, it is time for final scoring. Each player takes their final Terraform rating and adds points to it to determine the winner. Add the score in this order for each player. 1. Award awards to players who have achieved them. The best player for that award gains 5 victory points, and the second best gets 2 victory points. Ties are friendly, so players that are tied for first and or second place, they gain points for their placement. More on awards in video 4. 2. Milestones for each player who achieved a milestone gains 5 victory points. More on milestones in video 4. 3. Game board. Each player gains 1 victory point per greenery tile on the board that belongs to them, indicated by the player marker on the greenery tile. Each city tile that belongs to that player as well is worth 1 victory point per greenery tile that is owned by any player that is adjacent to the scoring player's city. This is up to a max of 6 points, as there are only 6 sides to each hex tile. More on tiles on video 4. 4. Finally count any victory points on any cards. Points are indicated on the card's lower right side using the Mars symbol. More on cards in video 3. Count up the points and the highest score wins. In case of a tie, the player with the most mega credits wins. In case of a further tie, the tied players share the victory.
Well, there you have it. That is the whole scope of Terraforming Mars. What you would expect an entire game of Terraforming Mars in each round of what is expected of you. Alright, that was a lot of information to absorb. Get your swig of coffee or beverage of your choice and head on over to the next video game, card play. Alright, and that's video 3. Alright, I'm Ross Gustafson, and I hope we continue to spark your interest in games like Terraforming Mars.